Hello, Dicks and Girls. I know the Witcher series needs very little introduction because Hello, Dicks and Girls. I know the Witcher series needs very little introduction because you've either played the games, or you've watched the Netflix show, or you've just sang Tosa Coin to your Witcher, or saw all those memes. However, let's talk about the book series that started it all, and I was certain I've done this video before, but maybe I'm not. Definitely, I'll never do a video about why you should watch the Polish Witcher series, because that's how I learned about that series. Then there are the books, and then play the games. So, these are 6 of the books, and I know that I'm missing one of them, actually 2 of them, because there has been another book written after the series was finished, and also it's whatever I could find, so it's a bit of a jumble. But yeah, basically I watched the Polish TV show back in 2007 or 8, when the video game was starting to create some buzz. And then in 2009 I found this copy in a used bookstore, The Last Witch, and I was fascinated. I think I've read this book 3 or 4 times in my life, and I seldom read books, so that should tell you something. The Witcher series. It started off as short stories written in a fantasy setting by Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski. He was from Poland, he was selling fare to the west, so he was able to get out of the country because the Iron Curtain existed back then, because before a time where people pretend to be communists on Twitter so they won't face the cold hard cancellation of Twitter, there were people in Eastern Europe pretending to be communists in order not to be trapped in the very hard and cold reality of gulags in Siberia. And Andrzej Sapkowski was one of the fortunate ones who was able to go outside the Iron Curtain, and he was able to read a lot of English paperbacks books of fantasy and sci-fi. So back in 1987, he stumbled upon a contest for a science fiction story. He wrote the story The Witcher, and he got second place. Because it was fantasy, not sci-fi. And yes, that's how things were once upon a time, especially when it came to left-leaning people, or people inspired by Soviet communism. Believe it or not, when I was in Greece back in the early zeros, there were some old school social realist science fiction editors who wouldn't accept fantasy because fantasy was fascist propaganda. Yes, that's the sad reality. We live in very enlightened times, and this story was published, was mildly successful. So no, it was actually very successful, and he wrote a series of other stories in those 2 books, The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny. And later on, he gathered them together, he tied them to an overarching plot, and published it as those 2 books. I think Sword of Destiny was published first, then The Last Wish was published, so he can kickstart his novels. And then he wrote 5 novels, one of which is missing. And the novels are quite different. In the short stories, it's all about Geralt, who is a very blue-collar sword and sorcery hero, and he has to deal with the realities of hunting monsters. And contrary to the games and the TV show, in the books, Geralt seldomly kills monsters. It's a series of stories about a monster hunter who is on hunting monsters. And you've definitely seen some of the episodes, and you see the complexities of it. And a lot of those stories are deconstruction of fairy tales and folk tales. So that's a very interesting element. The overarching plot is about Geralt having a special bond with a princess, Ciri, who is a child of destiny, meaning that he arranged it so that her parents will give it to the Witchers, as is the custom. And I believe Geralt is one of those children of destiny too. and as there's a war coming, he has to go and save her. That's the overarching story. And the novels are actually shifting from Geralt and his adventures or misadventures, because a lot of the stories are very humorous. Sapkowski's short stories remind me of Terry Pratchett or Jack Vance. Mostly Jack Vance, I guess. Like Terry Pratchett, Andrzej Sapkowski was probably inspired by Jack Vance and Fritz Leiber and their style of short story. The Kujal Adventures and also the Langmar books. So, Blood of the Elves is the first novel in the series. It is followed by Baptism of Fire. Then the one I'm missing, which is Time of Contempt. I should probably get it because at some point the books stopped being published in English. So Baptism of Fire and Time of Contempt, actually Time of Contempt and then Baptism of Fire, I've read them in fan translations. Yeah. I mean, translate your books and I'll buy them. Then it's The Tower of the Swallow, the penultimate book, and then there is The Lady of the Lake, and this book started to get translated and published again after the second video game, when the series became a huge success, because the first Witcher game was a bit of a cult favorite with, sub cards. A lot of bugs too. I played the past version, of course, so I escaped most of the bugs of the first game. I got the bugs of the other two, and Cyberpunk. So the shift in these books is very different, because now we follow mostly Cyrilla, the child of destiny, who is a princess who, due to her genealogical tree, is the chosen one. She has magical abilities she cannot access, and she's handed by armies. So overall it's a very straightforward fantasy narrative. However, The Witcher is a postmodern fantasy series, and this is the reason why you should read it, apart from The Last Wish, that everybody should read it because it's awesome. What I mean when I say postmodern, it's about the themes, the style of writing, and how it's structured, and the story is not groundbreaking. However, Andrzej Sapkowski does a lot of moving forward and backwards in time. He often uses documents to give us part of the story. He is subverting expectations and themes. I mean, Geralt, instead of being the alpha Chad male who is getting his two swords and slaying monsters or people, he's a very brooding anti-hero. He's a lot like Logan from the movie Logan, the third one. If you want to give a sense, he's facing his own emotions, his own tribulations, and Cyrilla is coming of age in a very troubled time, and she actually meets people, she goes around the world. She's bisexual, which, talking about a fantasy book in the early 90s, it's a bit of a surprise, I guess. And Andrzej Sapkowski is not the best person to write the story. It's kind of, sexualized in its own way, that it's here or there. There are a lot of details about the world, about the politics and the economics of the world. Andrzej Sapkowski is an economist, so a lot of what is happening is actually makes sense in an economic sense. The writing reminds me a lot of it's less Tolkien, and it's more like a Sergio Leone western or a Quentin Tarantino movie. There is this element of the underworld, not the underworld as a metaphysical place, the actual underworld, and gangs and kings and queens conspiring and having dialogues. I mean, the last book is told in media res, as it is narrated centuries into the future. Other parts are told in documents found years later. There's this element all over the books, and there is also the Ragtag group that is gathered around Geralt and Ciri that are not your average companions, and they also have their own issues and their own trials and tribulations. So it's a lot different from most fantasy. Also, it's got some interesting things most fantasy authors have forgotten to do. I mean, there is a big battle that is being described in a whole chapter in the last book, that during which nobody faints and is told how it's going on. It's actually multiple battlefronts that kind of remind me a little of, I know, the Black Company, I guess, but you have different points of reference at the battlefield and different aspects as the battle flows, which is great. You have a big final battle. You have a battle towards the end of the series where the evil henchmen are not staying there to die, but they actually retreat and they react like people, like actors, not just the pawns to be slain by our heroic heroes. And there's also the sense of drama and loss along with heroism and tragedy. And it's not exactly grimdark, I guess, but it comes from the same place with grimdark. It's Slavic doomer fantasy, which is the best description for it. It can be funny, it can be heartbreaking, it can be weird, but that's what is making the Witcher books so different and so unique. And so even if you've played the games, which have more standard stories, and to be honest, I kind of prefer the games. They're semi-sequels, they're requels of the books, meaning they are years after the books end, and they actually revisit those books a lot, and while not faithful to the events, they have a lot of fan service for the fans of the books. So yeah, that's good. But while the games have a more standard story of good and evil and Geralt is a heroic badass, these books try to do something different. And I guess this is why you should give them a shot. It may not be what you expect. The Netflix show is a lot closer to those books, but without the monster slaying. All this monster slaying in season 2 is not in the books, but it follows the gist of it. But it's a good idea to see where they started and how it would have been if it was not standardized or westernized for the games or the Netflix show. Yeah, it may not be for everybody, but The Last Wish is excellent, and the rest of the books, even though it were not quite my cup of tea, they were challenging. They challenged a lot of what I thought what fantasy can be and do, and if you like to be challenged, give them a shot. You won't regret it. Thank you for watching. If you have read the series, I'd love to hear your comments about it. What is your favorite book and your least favorite? And of course, having read a couple of those books in translations by fans, I may not be the most reliable reviewer. That's why I should probably give my reread if I ever review them one by one. I would love to hear your opinions about these books, if you have read them or not. And I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.